Hey guys, Chop It On here, Sunday afternoon, near the main slate lock. I wanted to at least get a quick video to you regarding the smaller slates because when you don't have time to play these bigger slates, a lot of times the smaller slates make more sense to me anyway. I can get away from the MME type of stuff and all of Scott's ownerships and projections and stuff, which are great. Rankings, I don't want to call them projections, but rankings, and I can get into the 100-man leagues in these smaller slates. They don't carry the big nickel. They don't carry the quarters. They don't carry a lot of those MME contests that we like to play that we would use those rankings and exposures for. So we have to kind of go back old school. And I love 100-man leagues. If you follow me at all, you know how much I love those, and I love to play them as much as I can. And today presents a decent opportunity. So let me show you how I go about setting things up, because it's going to use everything that we talk about, but just in a little bit different way. I would go to one of the smaller slates and see how many games it has on it. When it's got, 4 or 5 games on it, I like that slate. But when I went to the 100-man leagues, this one might fill, but they weren't showing a lot of promise a little bit ago. So when I went to the late slate, it had 4 games on it, and it was showing signs of contests that would fill. So what I want to show you here as I set this little bit up, before I show you those lineups, is explain to you in the domination station sort of how we're going to work this. We're going to have to come back and look again later because these lineups aren't confirmed, and things can change. One of my hitters may be missing, et cetera, et cetera. But I go to the research station and I do the same thing, K score and W score, and look for those things. And I'm adding up power score using the IRTs here, using the Sierras for the bullpen and the starters. And what I came up with on that slate was the Padres had the highest power score at 141, Dodgers were second at 140, and then San Francisco at 136. Those are the 3 teams I'd like to key on, because these 100-man leagues, you can be a little chalky in them. It doesn't take much to beat 100 people, so you don't have to get super goofy like in the nickels or the quarters where you're trying to beat 50,000 people. Instead, you're just trying to maybe use a little bit of leverage, but you're trying to stay kind of within the chalk. So think maybe fading that chalkiest team, that highest owned team, and focusing more on the second and third highest owned teams, so that you're still in that ownership hunt. You're still in those teams that are set up to have good matchups and have good days, yet you're just, again, like a cash game, maybe you're just a little bit different, like a league, what we talked about, a little bit different in the right areas, but still eating quite a bit of the chalk. Maybe LA Dodgers, instead of your main 4 stack, become one of your 3 stacks or one of your 2 stacks or whatever. And then that's fine. That eats a little bit of that chalk, but not enough. Where you're getting a little bit contrarian is maybe your bigger stack is San Diego. Maybe your bigger stack is Seattle or San Francisco or whatever. And that's where you're going to be able to. Now, if you went all the way and did a 4x3 or a 4x4, Arizona and Colorado Rockies, or Washington against Gausman and Arizona, now you're getting a little goofy. If you wanted to do a 4 stack of Washington because you felt like you didn't want to use Gausman and you wanted to stack against him for premium leverage, good. That's where you've taken your leverage. You might even only use a 3 stack. And then go ahead and chalk up the rest with the Dodgers or the Padres or whatever that are going to be higher owned teams on this 4-game slate. And it's just really based on implied run totals and brand names is where you can find these shorter slates, these smaller. It's hard to calculate ownership projections on those big 10 and 11 game slates. That's why we let Keg do that. We let the big guys with the algorithms and whatever do that. But on the smaller slates, we can use some common sense to guess very closely to where that ownership might go. It's not going to be in Colorado on the road facing San Diego, right? It's not going to be in Arizona facing the Dodgers. It's going to be with the Dodgers, with the Padres, with the Giants and Gausman, maybe with some of the, and then it's going to probably drop off. But those are generally where you're going to want to hide. You just have to shift that around a little bit to where you might take advantage of if the Dodgers falter, okay, that's my game plan going in. So I set up the optimizer with about 40 lineups because I want to look at a handful of ideas. I set it in tournament mode, 2 uniques, 33% exposure like I always do. Don't need to allow anybody against my pitcher if I don't want to. I won't have ownership most likely on this slate. So I can't use my standard, use 30% or half or whatever of the overall ownership that I built for, like I can on those main slates. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to run blind. And in the hitter stacking rules, I've already got my power scores. I've already got my ideas of who I think is set up well. And I've got an idea of who I think will also be chalky. So I'm going to use those together. And I'm going to set up some 3x2s because, again, 3x2s win. We're showing that in that article, even bigger tournaments. But on the smaller stuff, overstacking sometimes becomes a little detrimental. So I'll include some of those 3x2s and see if I don't get something that I like. I will still use the 4x and the 4x3. The 4x gets me 4x1x1, gets me 4x2x1. Of course, the 4x3 gets me the main thing that wins most of the time. So there, you can see how I've kind of shifted that, set that up. I'm taking pieces of everything because, again, I'm using generalized ideas from the optimizer, and then I'm going to use those to maybe hand build and kind of cap off what I did. I don't want any part of Washington, Arizona, and Colorado today. Not in my second stack, not in my main stack. Those guys are overwhelmingly lower power scores. I don't need them, right? I don't need to be that contrarian to win a 100-man league. If I was playing a 2,000-person single-entry GPP, yes, I would consider that. But in a 100-man league or a 20-man league or something like that, no, I don't need to necessarily worry about that I don't need to take that kind of risk to win such a small contest. I can, again, hide sort of largely within the chalkier teams, the more sensible offenses. But over here, I cap these 40%. Why? It gives me 3 teams mixing in regardless, because if it wants 40% San Francisco, it's going to move on after 40% of my lineups are built and go to, say, Dodgers for another 40%, and that's only 80%. That's going to have to find 20% from somebody else. So it's going to give me 3 teams mixing in, which gives me enough that I kind of like the way that feels. If I wanted a 4th team, I would drop this to 30% and go from there. But I'm going to let the domination station determine which teams are which. I'm just setting a limit on it so it will force a 2nd, 3rd, or maybe 4th team into my secondary stacks, okay? In the main stack, I'm going to go away from the Dodgers a little bit. If I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams, and I wanted an even spread, that's 20% per team. If I set those minimums at 20, 20, 20, 20, 20, whatever, then I'm going to get equal amounts of every team. I want to see more of the guys that are not the Dodgers. I think the Dodgers are going to be the highest owned offense. They might not be, but I think they are. So that's what I'm going to go with. I liked the Padres. So I put them at 25%. I liked the Giants. I put them at 25%. I put Seattle at 20% because they had a sneaky high power score. And if they end up doing well today, I can win a 100-man league very, very easily by having one of my 3 lineups have some heavy Seattle exposure. Not all 3, just one of the 3. And then the other 2 will be kind of chalky combinations. But I want to get some ideas, so I want more of those lineups being built. Maybe a little LA if I see something I really, really like. But that's really about it. That's all I'm after. And, of course, some Dodgers if I see a combination mix in with the Angels or with the Giants or Mariners or whatever, something a little lower owned, I may take that. So when I jump down here, I'm not worried about pitchers, just like we usually aren't worried about. And I'm just going to let the optimizer build me 40 lineups, and that gives me enough LA lineups, enough San Francisco lineups, enough whatever to mix around a little bit with a couple of unique players switching in and out and some randomization of those projections to give me some different combinations. When I look down here at where my lineups shook out, I see a ton of Gausman. That's fine. I don't really have much interest in Gonsolin, Gray, Suarez, whatever, right? I would use them maybe in a pinch, but in a 100-man league, I don't need to worry about it. In a larger quarter or nickel, yes, I would have these exposures and they'd be fine with me, but I don't want to be all in on Gausman. But in a 100-man league, I don't mind being all in on him because he's about the only damn pitcher that I would trust anyway. If he blows up, he blows up. I don't need to balance really much with 3 lineups. I would with 5 or 10 or whatever. With 5 lineups, I might have 4 Gausmans and 1 something else. But I don't need to worry about that in just building 3 lineups. So I'm going to have Gausman probably in everything that I do unless something else really appeals to me when I scroll through this page. I'm going to double check my teams, make sure my stack's right. Looks like a lot of Dodgers anyway. 35% even at capping them, which actually I can drop this secondary stack down to 20%. and I can re-optimize. And that would be one I would make, just to remove some more of that LA and bring in some more San Francisco, San Diego, whatever. Double check, make sure Gausman's still high up on the list. He is. And now let's look at the stacks again with LA down here at 20%. It allowed some more San Diego and San Francisco, just like predicted. So I'm going to go through here picking which ones do I want to see. I'm going to see a lot of these teams, but let's say I wanted to first, I don't want three of the same Team A and Team B stacks. So let's say I said I really like San Francisco. They're second or third owned or power score on the list. They could go off, and if they do, they'll generate me a little bit of leverage. Who do I want them with? Oh, well, let's get really funky. And let's say I don't want much LA at all. I want San Francisco with the Padres. And I'll take teams 2 and 3 instead of teams 1 and 2. And I come down, there's 4 Giants, 3 Padres, and Justin Turner. I like that lineup. I might use it just as it is. That looks pretty darn solid to me. If I didn't like some of these guys, or these guys don't end up making the starting lineup, then I might have to make some changes. But as a general rule, that lineup looks pretty good to me. And I like the Turner one-off just fine. It doesn't need to be some wackadoodle, Arizona or Colorado one-off. It can be Turner's fine. I'm getting my slight leverage in my Giants being my main stack and my Padres instead of Dodgers being my secondary stack. So if I mark that down as a 4x3, and I scroll down a little bit more and say, oh, you know what? I don't want to forget about Seattle. I want to find some Seattle. I got to scroll down here, and there's a 4x3 Dodgers in Seattle with a one-off of Brandon Crawford, probably fine. Let's get another idea. There's a 3x3x2, 3 Dodgers, 3 Giants, 2 Mariners, okay? I might want to be a little heavier on the Mariners if I'm thinking about them as a game plan. So I'm looking for more Mariners. And I would like, there's 3 and 2 okay, so I've got a 3 Mariner, 2 Dodgers, 2 Giants stacked with Grisham as a one-off. That's different enough. That will work. I might like that one. You see, this is all I'm doing. I'm using these as ideas. If I really didn't like Cody Bellinger, I could swap him out. I'd have 3,300 to play with, maybe more. I'd have 500 more. I'd have 3,800 to play with, right? If I took, Grisham out and put him in the outfield and move somebody else, I can move this stuff around. Took Turner out, I'd have, 500 more. I'd have 3,600 to play with here with Turner. If I wanted to use somebody else like a Kyle Seager and make it a full 4 stack, whatever my mind goes to, I'm, like I said, using this as an idea. So I've got a San Francisco and San Diego 4x3. I might have a Seattle and then a 3x2x2 using Giants and Dodgers. And then I might go looking around again and say, okay, I've got my Seattle. Now let's look around a little bit more and let's see if we don't find something with some Padres in it. There's a 4x2 if I wanted that. Find something with some Padres in it. There's 3 Padres and there's a bunch of one-offs. 1, 2, 3, 4 Padres. So it's a 4x1x1x1. Maybe I like that. That might work. Or I can come back up here to the top and I can look again for those Padres. There's 3 Padres and 4 Giants. There's 4 Padres, 2 Giants, a one-off of Van Meter, which I may or may not like, and Mookie Betts, which maybe I do like. There's 4 Padres, 3 Giants, and a Turner one-off. So, all I'm really doing, there's 4 and 3, 4 Padres, 3 Giants, and a Taylor one-off. I'm using these to get ideas. I'm just using the domination station, setting it up loosely the way I want to target teams, and then I'm searching these lineups. I'll pick 2 or 3 of them that I like. I'll pay attention to make sure that they're not all primary San Francisco stacks or primary Dodgers stacks, or that the same 3 Dodgers aren't being used in everything that I do. And then I'm going to go through them and say, okay, I like San Francisco and San Diego. I like San Diego and LA. I like Seattle and LA and San Diego. And I'm just going to make sure that I get a little bit of mix and match around those same general 3 or 4 teams. And I'm just going to roll it out and see what happens. Over time, you'll see whether your ideas work or they don't. Over my time, I've proven this track record works for my 100-man building, and this is basically how I do it. So just wanted to show you guys with enough time that you guys can use it for the afternoon slate if you want to. Jump in there with me, take a peek at some of these teams that I threw out, and we'll see where they line up. They might be 60th place. They might end up cashing in the top 10. Who knows? But we'll find out a little bit later today about dinner time. So peace out, homies, and have a great weekend. We'll talk to you on Monday.